Assalamu alaikum. Stop focusing on the Nofap streak. First of all, you're putting unnecessary pressure upon yourself. Yes, as a Muslim, you promise to Allah that you'll never go back to masturbating again. You promise to Allah that you'll never go back to porn ever again. But the reality is, if you've been masturbating for the past 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or however long it was that you started masturbating, it's going to be too much of an ask. It's going to be too much of a pressure for you to just go through the rest of your life without masturbating, for you to never masturbate again. You're going to mess up. You're going to fail sometimes. So stop counting the days. Stop focusing on this Nofap streak. Stop focusing on, oh yeah, 30 days of Nofap. Oh yeah, 60 days of Nofap. No. You should be merciful upon yourself. You should try to do your best. When you start off not masturbating, if you've gone at least 2 days without masturbating, let's say you used to masturbate throughout the entire year. Let's say you masturbate 30 days, a whole month, but then in that 1 month you didn't masturbate for 2 days only. That's still good. That's still progress. You still did well in that month. You should be happy that you at least went 1 day, that you at least went 2 days or even a week without masturbating. Celebrate the small wins. That's already making progress. If you do relapse, if you do find yourself going back to masturbating even after 2 days, what you do is you ask Allah for forgiveness. You stop the sin, you hate the sin, and you promise to Allah that you'll never go back to doing it again. And then you move on. You don't stay in that depressive loop. You don't stay in that depressed state. That's how you're going to end up masturbating again. That's when Shaitan can come and whisper to you and tell you that you failed, that you're a failure, that you never get over this addiction. So you might as well just continue. That is how you fail. That is the problem with this whole Nofap streak. You're putting unnecessary pressure upon yourself. So when you do fail, when you do relapse, ask Allah for forgiveness, promise to Allah that you never do it again, and then move on. And then go through another multiple days without masturbating. Do your best to go through as many days as possible without masturbating. The next reason why this whole Nofap streak is flawed is that the whole framing, the whole idea of it is just flawed. The whole framing of the whole Nofap streak is flawed because you're making the whole Nofap, you're making fapping. By saying Nofap, focusing on a Nofap streak, you're indirectly making masturbation still a part of your life. You should actually identify yourself as somebody who doesn't even masturbate. You shouldn't even need a Nofap streak. You should just be that person who just doesn't masturbate. You see yourself as the guy who, you just don't masturbate. I'll even go as far as to say you need to have an ego about yourself. You need to have that ego about yourself. You need to think of yourself as too good for masturbation, too good for porn. Maybe does it sound arrogant, perhaps? But at the end of the day, this is what stops you from going back to that disgusting thing, from going back to such disgusting sins. You need to look at you need to see yourself as somebody who's too good for porn, who's too good to masturbate. So whenever the urge comes in your mind, you just say, I'm too good for this. I don't need to masturbate. I'm too good for this. Why do I even think about masturbating? Why should I even do this? You ask Allah for protection. You seek refuge in Allah from the cursed Satan, and then you just don't do it. And then you go and do something else. If you're on that day, one day when you're just scrolling on your phone, you're just watching random content, you're just whatever it is, maybe it's YouTube Shorts or TikTok or whatever, and then you see some inappropriate image, and then you get the urge to masturbate or do something stupid. You ask Allah to protect you from Shaitan. You put the phone down, and then you go and do something else. You need to look at yourself as somebody who's too good to masturbate, somebody who's too good for porn. You need to tell yourself, I don't masturbate, I don't watch porn, I do productive things. So don't see yourself as so. Don't focus on this whole Nofap streak, because when you focus on 30 days of Nofap or how to get to day 7 of Nofap, you're still making masturbation a part of your life. You're still making the whole fapping thing a part of your life. It should not even be a part of your life. It should not even cross your mind. You need to preoccupy your mind in the worship of Allah. When the urge comes to you, when the urge comes to masturbate or do something inappropriate, keep asking Allah for help. Like I always say, the real way to quit masturbation, the real way to get rid of addictions is to ask Allah for help. Allah is the one who will actually cure you, who will actually rid you of this addiction. Which leads me on to the next point. I have a course which is in the description below, which actually teaches you how to give up on this disgusting habit, how to give up on masturbation. And like I said before, celebrate the small wins. If you used to masturbate for the whole of your month, and you go on this journey. You say, okay, from now on, I'm never going to masturbate again. You ask Allah for forgiveness. You promise to Allah that you never go back to the sin, that you hate the sin, and you ask Allah that, and you ask Allah for forgiveness, and you never go back to the sin again. You promise to Allah that. But then 2 days in, you go through 2 days without masturbating, and then on the third day you fail. You just masturbate. The urge is too strong. The urge just pulls you in, and then you end up watching porn, and then that makes you want to masturbate. In that situation, of course, you ask Allah for forgiveness. You pray. You like I said before. You pray for the sin. You go pray 2 rakahs of forgiveness. You ask Allah for forgiveness, and you say astaghfirullah 100 times. Or if you even have money, then you pay a big amount of your money to zakat, and then you promise to Allah that you never go back to doing that again. And then after that, you move on. You don't ponder upon it. You don't sit there and regret and feel shame and get depressed about it. You messed up. Yes, you messed up, but then you ask Allah for forgiveness and move on. Remember, the whole point of human beings, the whole point of humanity is when they sin, they ask Allah for forgiveness. It shows that we are imperfect, because think about it. If we never needed to ask Allah for forgiveness, then we would just be arrogant. We would just be arrogant creatures. We would think that, okay, why would I ever need to turn back to Allah? I'm already perfect. I never sin. I never commit a sin. I never make mistakes. Why do I ever need to turn back to Allah? So the whole point is for us to ask for forgiveness, to show, it's a reminder that we are imperfect. We make mistakes. We are flawed creations. Yeah, Allah created us in the perfect way, but we still make sins. We still need to turn back to Allah. If we were, like I said, if we were just perfect, if we were just sinless creatures and we never made mistakes, would we really want to turn back to Allah? Would there really be a need for us to go to Allah? Other than if we need something like, oh yeah, I want to get married, or I want to have a fancy car, or I want to be rich, or whatever. Yes, in those situations, turn back to Allah. But if we were just perfect, we would never feel the need to go and ask Allah for forgiveness. We would never feel the need to ask Allah to protect us from shaitan and even ourselves, because us ourselves are even the worst enemy. The worst enemy is not just shaitan, it's ourselves sometimes. It's our own soul. Us, our own laziness, our own incompetencies, our own need and want to commit sins, to do something which is haram. So that's why you constantly need to turn back to Allah. That's why when you do commit a sin, you ask Allah for forgiveness. You constantly seek the refuge in Allah from shaitan. So if you fail, if you commit a sin, if you commit this disgusting sin, which is watching porn and masturbation, then go and ask Allah for help. Go and seek refuge in Allah from shaitan. I hope that was useful to you. Assalamu alaikum. Take care.